Hey, what do you say? Special edition of the Run-In podcast here. We gave you a NFL draft edition, or preview, I guess you could say, with Charles Davis from NFL Network, or back in April, I believe it was, with DJ and Phil. Now it's March Madness is upon us. So we brought in Alex Del Barrio, who not only is a Patreon member, but he also works for CBS, covers basketball, covers a lot of things, right?
Yeah, college basketball, college football mostly, but I'll be doing lacrosse up in Boston here next week too. So, yeah, they got me kind of on everything now.
All over the place. We got our boy DJ as well. What's up, man?
It's showtime, folks. Can you cage the madness? As we got the March Madness coming up. We got the brackets, and I've already had like 6 invitations to do brackets. So yeah, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna have a leg up. I'm gonna have to. I get to throw my ideas out in this episode. But maybe if you guys are doing your brackets, maybe listen to us for a minute and before you make your picks, and let's see what happens.
But if you win anything, any kind of money, though, I'm gonna put this disclaimer out there. You got to pay myself, DJ, Alex, and our third man in today as we talk to Alex about March Madness and the NCAA bracket. The man from the South, Mike Lanham. What's up, buddy?
What's up, guys? It's the everyone's favorite time of year. Well, I guess it depends on what teams you root for, because if you didn't make the tournament or you're going out early, it might be rough to have to watch the next couple weeks.
Or if you're up here in the Northeast where nobody gives a shit about. Well, I shouldn't say that, because UConn is pretty big. But college sports just aren't huge up here, unless we were talking before we hit the record button, unless it's college hockey. That's really the only thing people care about up here in Connecticut, which is why I'm really just going to turn things over to Mike and DJ to ask Alex all the basketball questions, because this is really the only time this and the NBA playoffs are the only time I really watch basketball or pay attention to basketball. So, but again, if you guys win any money from your brackets because of Alex, you have to tip all 4 of us and join our Patreon over at patreon.com/RUNINPod, right?
And disclaimer: if you lose money, then we're not responsible.
Oh yeah, that's totally their fault if they lose money. So
in your total legal states that allow betting, because mine doesn't.
No, Connecticut does. California doesn't, really?
Not on the app. Nope.
Wow, but you can smoke weed on every corner.
There you go.
But you can't gamble.
It's all coming down the pipe. I'm in Texas, and it's not allowed yet. But all the team owners, Jerry Jones and Tillman Fertitta, and all that, they're all lobbying at this point. Which, I mean, this for a pretty red state in terms of our local, government, in terms of our state government. It seems to be like some of the tide is starting to change a little bit, because we are losing a ton of money to Louisiana on gambling.
Dude, I live like 2 minutes from the Indiana border. Like, you cross the river, and every day cars are just parked along the street doing their betting. They turn around and come back to Kentucky.
Wow.
So it's right there, and all you got to do is cross the bridge, and it shows up as you're on your phone that you're in a different state. So
we had the same thing here in Connecticut. I can spit into Massachusetts, and people would come into my town because it's like literally right next door, bet and leave. But now it's legal in Massachusetts as of like this week.
Right.
So yeah. So just in time they dropped the ball on it being legal for Super Bowl, but they got it in time legally for March Madness. So, but without further ado, so it's Selection Sunday here. The number ones, I believe, are Alabama, Houston, Kansas, and Purdue. Did you see that coming, Alex? Or I haven't paid attention, so I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, it was between 5-6 teams. I think you could have thrown Texas on the one line at some point, but I think Kansas going into the day was I think expected to be the number 1 overall seed, but after they lost to Texas in the Big 12 game last night, a lot of people had them moving down a bit. I don't think a lot of people expected them to be like the number 4 team, but it is. They do like to keep teams at home, and I think that I think there's some argument to be made that Purdue, while winning the Big Ten regular season and the Big Ten conference tournament, that they deserve to be the number 2 overall seed. I was a little bit, Alabama wiped the floor with Texas A&M today. So I think they made a really strong showing despite all the controversy with that program. There was really no way to keep them out of being the number one overall seed after once Kansas lost, kind of all bets were off on the top seed overall. But I'm pretty pleased with the way that the top seeds ended up kind of breaking down. I think you could make an argument that, the committee got it pretty right. So I think most people for those teams would be pretty happy.
Yeah, there's, like Alex said, there's probably 2 or 3 teams you could have swapped for those number ones, but you also at the same time can't really argue the number ones. A lot of that sometimes feels like it's already set up even before the end of the conference championship. So, and then Kansas, number one strength of schedule for the year, all those quad 1 wins. It's hard to argue with who they played, but at the end of the year, they kind of dropped off the last couple games. So they could have easily fallen probably to a 2 and swapped with Texas, but yeah, they're not getting quite the home games after that first weekend. They've got to go to Vegas now instead of Kansas City, so it's not as easy for them.
Oh darn!
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot nicer when you got those home games.
It would. I think the one thing too is Kansas was already so far ahead to be at a 1 seed, no matter if they lost. But Texas, you could really make an argument. Kansas and Texas had the most quad 1 wins like of any team in the country.
Right.
Just for the sake of the fact that they played in the Big 12. And Texas beat Kansas twice now. They beat them in the final game of the regular season, and they beat them in the conference tournament. They beat them quite handily.
That's true.
So there was kind of an argument to be made that Texas could have been on the 1 line, but I think all that being said, you kind of look at how it all broke down with Texas. They'll start in Des Moines there, but you look at the way that region breaks down. They really have a good matchup if they get Texas A&M in round 2. It's kind of an easier path for them to get to the Sweet 16. So I think they're pretty happy with where they're at, because I think that the toughest opponent for them won't be into the regional final when they would probably play Houston.
Yeah, that's how I picked it. They end up playing Houston. Houston's very talented. What would you say is the biggest snub of the tournament?
Biggest snub, to be honest with you, I can't really make a case for anyone. I will say this is, I do a lot of mid-majors, so I do a lot of Conference USA, a lot of MAC, a lot of Missouri Valley, A10, and it breaks my heart to see some of these teams that win their league and don't get in. So like a team like Toledo, they could easily win 1 or 2 games in this tournament, but because the MAC only gets 1 team in, it sucks for them. I think you could make the same case for Bradley out of the Missouri Valley. It's kind of an odd year that the Missouri Valley only gets 1 team in. Usually, they would get 2, but ever since kind of like Wichita State left the conference a few years ago for the American, that the conference ranking has been lacking for them. So unfortunately for the Missouri Valley, they only get 1 team in, but you could really make the case that their 2-team Bradley or even their 3-team Southern Illinois could win a game in this tournament. As far as teams that didn't make it from the big leagues, I really can't see like why North Carolina would be in. Like I know they were at the top. I know a lot of people are kind of upset, but they didn't really make a case at the end of the year to be in the tournament. So you look at that last 4, and they're all from Power 5 leagues, but they don't have really good records. They have a lot of quad 1 opportunities, so they're going to get quad 1 wins. But they didn't. To me, they don't do enough, and I'm always going to root for the mid-major conferences. So I'm very happy that the Mountain West got as many teams as they did in. I thought Nevada was in danger of not making the tournament, so I was happy to see them make it. Utah State had a great run through the Mountain West tournament, before losing to San Diego State. So they got in, and I thought they got seeded very well. I think they're on the 10 line, if I'm not mistaken. So, those are the types of things that I look towards when the bracket comes down. But as far as like snubs, it's going to be teams that aren't the last 4 out that I would say I wish would get a bigger look. I wish I had more opportunities to get a look, because like you're going to watch Drake in this tournament. Drake has 3 25-year-old players. Drake can easily beat Miami.
Yeah.
And I can see Drake making it to the Sweet 16 because they have a veteran team that knows how to win big games, and there's just older players, and
kind of like UCLA too.
Yeah, UCLA, kind of a similar situation. You're going to see this in college basketball for the next 2, 3, 4 years because of the COVID year, so you're going to see a lot of these super seniors that got that free year of eligibility, but got a chance to play and still keep their year of eligibility. So we're going to see this in college basketball for the next few years. I know it's a long-winded answer to your original question, but yeah, I tend to look towards some of these teams from the smaller leagues that only get one team in that like UAB could have won a game in this tournament, but Florida Atlantic was just so dominant. So UAB would have been a bid stealer if they had won against FAU, who they actually beat at UAB earlier this year. I did that game like when FAU's winning streak ended. I think it was at 19 in a row or something along those lines. And yeah, so I definitely think that there's some really quality teams that didn't make the tournament, and I actually think the NIT will be pretty entertaining because of that.
Yeah,
UNC doesn't think it'll be entertaining.
No.
They didn't even take the NIT bid.
That's what I'm saying.
Turned the bid down. Yeah, I thought like Oklahoma State was probably the one team that was probably closest to getting in.
Mm-hmm.
But the Big 12 probably deserved to have the most teams, and they ended up having, I think, the third most teams get in. UNC being the number one preseason and not making it. Obviously, I guess this is the first time it's ever happened. I mean, really, their best thing is probably that Alabama game, right? Where they took them to 4 overtimes. Had they won that game, they'd probably find a way to get in, even though they probably didn't deserve it. But yeah, at the end of the day, you just look at some of their losses, and yeah, there's a reason they're left out.
Yeah, no, I don't think they had it this year. So, it's supposed to be the best of the best here. So you can't get in on, I've never been one to just give people bids just from the name on the front of the jersey.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get into it, but seeing a preseason number one not even make the tournament, this is probably one of the most wide open tournaments I think we've had in a long time.
100%.
There's easily 8 to 10 teams. If they won it, I'm not going to be surprised.
Right.
Even higher than 3 and 4 seeds. That
right.
I think you could take the top 8 teams out of the field right now. Just not even consider them all potential Final Four teams.
Right.
You could go down the bracket and find another 10 teams that could make the Final Four.
Yeah,
legitimately.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, hot teams that always seems to be a trend going into March Madness is who's hot at the right time.
I mean,
for me,
Roberts.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, because you were talking about these mid majors and stuff like that. Because obviously you have the teams like Duke, who's played well recently.
Oh yeah,
the last few games.
Run through the ACC tournament.
Marquette, Texas, UConn are all playing high end college basketball, right? But yeah, then you've got some of these smaller schools
kind of flip to the flip side of that. And you got a team like Kansas that Coach Self was in the hospital the last couple of days or whatever. They haven't been playing themselves these last couple of games, especially at the end of the regular season too, losing to Texas on the road. Houston was without their leading scorer today, and they're lost to Memphis. So you wonder how that will change things. So yeah, I think another team in terms of being hot, you got to consider VCU, and they've been just as advertised out of the A10. It was a down year for that league, only getting one team in the tournament, but VCU is as good as any team. And I think that's, I always say you got to pick 1-12-5. Unfortunately they get St. Mary's, who's beaten Gonzaga this year, but
they got blown out by Gonzaga too.
Yeah, they got blown out.
Gonzaga got that revenge game. So
yeah,
exactly.
Well, they have that's a really good rivalry. Though, St. Mary's and Gonzaga.
Well, and Gonzaga's a team. Every year, everybody's like Gonzaga. They might win the whole thing, and you're like, it's never going to happen. Now this year, they're kind of under the radar as what are they, a 3 seed?
Yep.
Gonzaga might make a run here, especially with that bracket that they're in. I could easily see them being there.
They're a pretty popular dark horse national champion pick for this year.
Right.
A lot of folks. I think Seth Davis on the the show today even put Gonzaga to win, if I'm not mistaken, or it might have been Clark Kellogg. Somebody on the CBS panel today picked them to win it.
I've seen a lot of different picks. There's not a lot of people outside of maybe Alabama because they're the overall number one. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing a lot of different picks, like all over the board.
Yeah. No, there is no. I've not seen a majority.
There's not really a super like a front runner outside of just your chalk of going. I'm going to pick Alabama. I'm going to pick Houston, stuff like that.
And just that West region in particular, like so in that region you have UCLA, Gonzaga, TCU, UConn, St. Mary's, VCU, which is the first round game, and then Kansas is the top seed in the that West region. Looks. I don't know if I think I want to see all the. That's going to be one of the. I'm going to try to see all those games.
That West region is awesome.
Yeah,
that West region really is awesome. Yeah, because Boise State is really good. Northwestern has been really good all year long. Nevada, Arizona State. That's going to be a fun.
Yeah, just the play-in game. Yeah,
I mean, that's a great. And you got Rick Pitino at Iona, man. Like hoping to stick at the UConn there, and maybe the Gales can make a run. So that is a really fun region. I'm glad you guys pointed that out.
Yeah, especially with what are those games end up being in the Garden at the end, right? Is that where they're playing?
I believe so.
So Pitino, kind of the rumors that he might be moving into that league again, so he might have a little extra fire behind him in that match. So Pitino, with all the controversy around him ever since he left Kentucky, is still a really good college basketball coach.
Yeah, no doubt, and his name's been mentioned about with the Texas Tech opening, and even people at Texas who think that if they don't give it to Rodney Terry, which I think you kind of have to give it to him now, but they may knock the door down. St. John's is open. You get Rick Pitino go back over there. There's a lot of options now for Pitino, so it's going to be there's going to be some fun conversations about the future of Rick Pitino during this tournament.
Yeah, because even last night I heard I was Mad Dog Radio. They were talking about Georgetown for
yeah.
He's definitely not coming back to the Celtics.
Kentucky probably wouldn't take him back, but he might be better than what they've been lately.
Man,
that's personal opinion. I live in Kentucky, and I'm not a Kentucky fan, so people hate on it a lot. But
Alex, how is it for you to watch these games? Like, do you have a vested interest in? I've always wondered this because I'm a huge sports fan. We talked about this off the air. I went to school for radio and I worked at ESPN for a hot minute. And I obviously not with college basketball, but baseball, hockey, football. I'm a diehard with my teams. Is it hard for you to watch these games? Like, is there a college basketball team that you're vested in, or do you separate them because this is your job essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I went to two schools. I went to Boston University for 3 years, and then I finished at Texas Pan American, which is UTRGV now. BU makes the NCAA tournament once every 15 years, and UTRGV has never made the NCAA tournament, so it usually doesn't matter. And I do local TV, so I've been doing this long enough to where my fandom has kind of waned a little bit, and I'm a fan of coaches and players more so than I am about like my program or like I need to, Granted, if BU made the Sweet 16 one year or UTRGV made the tournament for the first time, I'd probably go and I'd wear my team gear. But as far as watching these games, like I actually emailed Rob Senderhoff, he's the head coach at Kent State today, just to congratulate him on winning the MAC, because the MAC is one of those leagues where you're only going to get one team in, and you could have a phenomenal 26, 27, 28 win season like Toledo did and not be in the tournament. And so he's one of my favorite guys in that league to talk to coaching wise. So I texted him to congratulate him. So I'm kind of rooting for Kent State to win games, and some of these other guys that I get a chance to interact with during my travels and doing games for CBS. I'm rooting for them because I like them and their programs, but I just kind of enjoy it, at this particular stage. If I'm not calling the game, if I have no vested interest in the game in terms of preparing for it, I just kind of sit back, watch it as a fan. And I kind of I listen to the announcers and watch the production
Sure.
a little bit more closely on how they approach a replay of something or a particular situation, or how an announcer approaches a big moment or something like that. I'm always kind of like studying that type of stuff as well. So so it's kind of a mixed bag when I'm watching these games.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Who do you see as like a Cinderella story? I know you mentioned Drake making it to the Sweet 16. I feel like they would be a little bit of a Cinderella story, but is there another team that you have in mind that could make a run here in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight?
Yeah, so there's a few. I've mentioned a couple of them. Drake, Kent State are in the same region, and I believe they would meet up in the second. Yeah, they would. They meet up in the second round, which would be a great game. Those are two teams that if they get through their first round matchups respectively, like one of those teams, has Elite Eight potential written all over them because they're both old teams.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two. I think you can't count out VCU. Mike Rhodes has done a great job there. In fact, a lot of people don't remember that VCU qualified for the tournament in 2020 and they couldn't play their tournament game. They had to forfeit that tournament game. So so that there's some kind of like antsiness in that program about trying to get back to the tournament and win a tournament game. They're a good team. Iona, you can't count out Rick Pitino and them. I think they have a win or two in them in the tournament. I haven't seen UC Santa Barbara play, but I just keep hearing like watch out for the Gauchos. So I would say I won't make that pick, but like but a lot of teams should watch out for them. I'll give you some teams that I've seen up close. Florida Atlantic out of CUSA, they're as good as just they're a top 25 team, and in my opinion, they've been in the top 25 this year, so they have a lot of potential. Memphis is kind of playing really well right now, so I think that might be a rough matchup for them in the first round. But if FAU can get past Memphis, I actually think that's a team that could upset Purdue. To be honest with you, they just do so many things so well, and as we saw today, Purdue cannot stop the press, and FAU plays really well defensively. So I think that could be a possibility, if certain things break a certain way. And then Utah State out of the Mountain West, they obviously, they're a good team, but people will see their seeding and they'll say, oh, it's a 10 seed, they can't make it. No, that team can make the Elite Eight. They're I think one of the top 5 best 3-point shooting teams in the country. They have 2 of the top 10 best 3-point shooters individually in the country. So that's a team that can score, and the tournament's all about guard play. So when you've got some players like they have that can shoot the ball from the outside, that bodes well for your tournament live. So Utah State probably another one kind of thrown in there as well. So FAU, Utah State, as I mentioned, Kent State or Drake or some of the Cinderella teams or the teams that from names of teams that people just don't know because they don't see them very often. Those are probably some of the ones that I'd pick.
All right. DJ, what do you got? Any other questions or? Oh,
for me, like no, I didn't hear you for just a minute.
All right.
So I'm like, let's get the brass tacks here. So let's go. What's your final 8? Like I know.
Oh, my
final 8. I was going to ask them final 4.
Final 8. Oh, that's tough. Okay, so I think I got Houston. So I'll start in the Midwest, so that's the upper right if you guys are following along with your brackets. I'm assuming there's people who might be listening to the podcast might be staring at their bracket. So I think I'll go Houston and Texas in the Elite Eight there. So a very chalky region there for me. And I'm going to pick Texas to go to the Final Four out of the Midwest. Go down to the bottom right, which is the West region. I'm going to say Kansas will get there and we'll play Gonzaga. And then I'm going to have Gonzaga coming out of the West region. In the East, so bottom left, so that's the Purdue region. I'm going to have Purdue in the regional final facing Marquette, and I'll have Marquette making it to the Final Four. Okay. And then in the South region, I've got Alabama against Arizona and Alabama going to the Final Four.
All right. Give me 5 players we should watch in this tournament that, could be drafted in June or just, that you have seen maybe. Just 5 players that, that we should put the spotlight on and pay attention to in this tournament this year.
Well, I'll give you some of the ones that I think are going to be really interesting storylines. Sincere Carey out of Kent State, I think is a scores guard. Like he is one of the most fun guards in the country to watch play, and not a lot of people get to watch his games. So Sincere Carey out of Kent State, I think, is going to be one of the guys that you're really going to want to pay attention to. Sean Bairstow over at Utah State, him and that rest of that Utah State team, like I said, is look, they're just a team that can score in bunches. The coach, Coach Ryan Odom, he was actually the coach at UMBC when they beat Virginia, that 16 seed to beat the 1. So he's now the coach at Utah State. So he's got some tournament history behind him there. So I'm curious to see how he does with a much better team. Of course, you can't talk about the NCAA tournament without talking about Zach Edey at Purdue. What a game he had here in the Big Ten title game, and I think he's such an interesting player with his height and his wingspan and his ability. But he made some moves in the post that he looked like Kevin McHale down there, even though he was 7'4". He was so agile. He split through 3 defenders when they triple teamed him during the game today. So he's obviously always fun to watch. Drew Timme, you can't talk about this tournament without mentioning Drew Timme. We're talking about old players for Gonzaga. So
true.
Feels like he's been at Gonzaga forever.
Yeah, it feels like it's his 10th year
right
there at Gonzaga. And I think the other one, to kind of keep an eye on, and just for a number of different reasons, is Brandon Miller at Alabama. He's projected to be a lottery pick, and there's that situation where there was a shooting and a murder that took place involving a former Alabama player. Miller was, the cops say, allegedly brought the gun to the shooting, and he still continues to play. And that controversy has been hanging and played very well. I think he dropped 40 in the first game back after being on a brief hiatus. And that Alabama team's the number 1 overall seed. So, there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on him and that program kind of moving forward here.
Yeah. I mean, the pressure is going to be on Brandon Miller. Those first 2 games are in Birmingham, so they look out there. But after that, if they advance like they're predicted to, will the pressure get to him? Will the crowd that's going to be trying to boo him out of the building? I think that'll really test his NBA future there. And,
sure.
I mean, all depending on what happens legality-wise with him. But, yeah, that's a kid with a bright future. Hopefully some of that stuff's not true or works itself out. But he's a star of a player, and hopefully he hasn't thrown all that away.
Yeah, no doubt. And I would say the other interesting storyline, I would say, and Marcus Sasser, certainly the leader of that Houston Cougar team. We'll see how his health works through this tournament. I know he was out for the American Championship game, but the Final Four is in Houston. Houston is a number 1 seed and has a decent path to get at least to the Elite 8 before facing Texas or whoever else comes out of that bottom side of the bracket. So being able to get to the Final Four in your home city. Jim Nance is his last Final Four calling for us at CBS.
Oh,
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a U of H alum. So yeah, wow. So this will be Jim's final Four and college basketball tournament, and then Ian Eagle takes over as our lead college basketball voice moving forward.
I like Ian. That'll definitely be different to not have Jim Nance on the call. So
is he still going to do NFL games?
Oh yeah, he'll still be on the NFL for a while and the Masters. Yeah.
Golf,
he's just
golf. As long as you got him for the.
Mike, you got anything else to bounce off of Alex here?
I mean, I think we covered it. I mean, is there?
You guys put me on the spot. I gave my Elite Eight and Final Four. I want to hear what DJ and Mike have to say about this.
All right, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, we're talking about not just one person making picks here. I got two pretty educated college basketball fans here. I want to see what they say, so that we come back to this in April, we can figure out who actually had the best picks.
I like that. I'm off the hook. No pressure on me here. I'll give you my Frozen Four picks later on.
Yeah, Tommy's got his Frozen Four picks. He's going to tell me if he's going to win Hockey East here in a little bit.
Mike, you want to go first? You're the guest.
Yeah, it's either way. So
the other guest. Whatever. Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of close to where Alex is. I do think it'll be Houston and Texas out of the Midwest. I'd probably put Texas in the Final Four. In the West, I'm going to go with Kansas and Gonzaga. I'm going to have Kansas in the Final Four. In the East, I'm going to go with Marquette and Duke. I think Duke's just playing, and Marquette are just playing excellent basketball at the right time. And then out of the South, I'm still seeing chalk. I'm going to go with Alabama and Arizona, with Alabama advancing to the Final Four to play Marquette. And then in the finals, I'm going to have Bama and Kansas, and I'm going to have Kansas getting hot at the right time, and they're going to repeat, cut down the nets. That's the home. That's the home. I know,
home.
but I do really feel like if they can kind of get their feet underneath them, that second game, maybe playing Arkansas is going to be tough. But I think if they can get past that, I think they really do have a good chance of making it. But there's just so many teams out there that can make the Final Four. We talked about UConn. Even like a team like Creighton, who was ranked top 10 at the beginning of the year, that's a tournament team. I think if they start out well, they could really take over that South region. There's going to be upsets. There's always upsets that we're not expecting, even past just the opening round.
Right.
So yeah, don't be surprised to see a team like Drake or Miami, whoever wins that game, advancing all the way to maybe like the Elite Eight. I know there's a lot of people on Xavier, TCU, but that Gonzaga match is going to be tough. Tennessee losing their best player a couple weeks ago. I think they're going to be out in the first round with Louisiana.
Probably.
So yeah, I mean, it's just so wide open. Like everyone's like, oh, 1 and 2 seeds could easily advance, but I could also see there only being like maybe one seed in the Final Four.
Yeah, I don't see the whole easy thing for number 1 seeds. I don't think that's true either. All right, so West region, like I was just only a few differences for me. So in the West region, I had Kansas versus UCLA, with Kansas winning, and then Midwest, Texas versus Houston, with Texas winning that one. East was Duke versus Marquette, with Duke still winning that one. They're just playing really good basketball. And then South, I had Alabama versus Arizona, with Alabama winning. And then pretty much the same. So I like Mike will probably love this. I do have Kansas also repeating.
Yeah, they didn't look good in those Texas games, which is what would scare me. But Bill Self back on the sidelines. They're a team that can get hot. They've got multiple NBA players on their team. It's the health thing for a lot of teams like UCLA, Houston. There's a lot of guys that, depending on how long they're out,
right,
to me is going to depend on if they can make it that far in the tournament. So yeah, I mean, maybe is there a team, maybe what's the lowest seeded team you look at that you're like, this would not surprise me if they make the Final Four or maybe even the finals?
The Final Four. I mean, I could legitimately see I can legitimately see Drake making the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm surprised how many
I
people
can
I've
see them
seen have.
losing. I can see them losing the first round, and I can see them make it to the Final Four.
I'm surprised how many people I saw pick Miami as a Final Four team, and I just don't feel like the ACC and stuff, like, just not what it has been in the past.
Yeah, the ACC was certainly down this year, and I think even Duke showed that early, and then they kind of turned things on and figured it out here at the end of the year. But
played well at home, obviously, but on the road.
Big Ten and ACC teams this year scare me in terms of like pushing them to deep tournament runs, because I always feel like, especially the Big Ten, is they get all these teams in, and then they just can't figure it out because they got a lot of defensive oriented teams or teams that are used to working the ball inside, and they run up a team that runs on them or shoots the three really well, and then they get ousted. I don't think that's the same case for the ACC. I think there's there's good teams in both leagues, but you look at what that Big Ten tournament, you had the 10 seed Penn State advance all the way to the finals. You had a 13 seed in Ohio State advance to the semifinals. So it's like, how good are these teams? Are they good because the conference is that deep, or is there kind of a little bit of mediocrity kind of in the middle there that allows a team to make a run like that? That's why I don't have any faith right now. You should never lose faith in Tom Izzo, but I don't have a ton of faith in Michigan State beyond maybe a first round victory against Southern Cal. I think if they get matched up with Marquette will win. The only thing that scares me about Marquette is that Shaka Smart is their head coach, and since he coached VCU in that tournament run that took VCU to the Final Four, he has not won an NCAA tournament game.
Wow.
So there's even though he's taken Texas, he took Texas, he won the Big 12 tournament, took Texas to the NCAA tournament, and they lost in the first round to Abilene Christian. And then and now he's at Marquette trying to get an NCAA tournament win. They're playing really well right now, so I'd have a hard time believing they'd lose in the first round. As far as other double-digit seeds, eventually making the Final Four, I think you can make a case for Utah State as well in terms of a low-seeded team, and maybe VCU again. But again, I just think it's going to be really tough this year for a St. Peter's type run from one of these teams below the 12 line to make a run. I do think when you take the top 8 teams and maybe go down to the top 12 teams, I have a tough time seeing them as easy outs. I think there's no dominant team that you can expect to make it and say, oh, for sure they're going to win the national championship. But I think you can make a case for any of the top 12 teams to win it. But I also can't see teams below them beating a lot of those top 12 teams along the way. So I think they were going to get a pretty chalky or chalkish regional finals.
Yeah, it seems set up for that. I mean, it's March Madness. You always have those upsets, but do the teams ever actually make it to the finals or the final four? It seems like eventually they just run out of.
Usually the Elite Eight is about as far as they'll push. Every now and then you get the VCUs or the George Masons, but this year I just don't see it. I just think the 1 and 2 lines are pretty strong in all 4 regions. So I just see a tough. It's a pretty tough path for one of those. You'd have to get a 1 seed out early in those regions for a double-digit seed to have a chance of making it, where they can either avoid them or be the ones that beat them.
Yeah, which looking at it, Memphis maybe beating Purdue, I feel like would be the best chance for one to go out early. But I mean, we've seen it happen multiple times. So those 8-9 matchups are always really good, and the 4-13s are always fun. So it's March Madness. It's always fun. It's never going to be what we expect.
I love the fact of from working from home on Thursday and Friday of this week. As much as I'm not obviously, like I said, I'm not a huge basketball guy, but I do love being home on Thursday and Friday of this week. Even before COVID and my work, migrated to everybody working from home. even before that, I would be like, I got to work from home Thursday or Friday. And I mean, everybody, the same thing.
They're the two most used PTO days of the year.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
See,
for sure.
When we were kids, though, like sometimes they would let us watch it kind of during school because, like, in the 90s, UK was so dominant. All the teachers were like, UK. So they would turn it on and stuff. But then, like, once they started moving games to
radio.
Yeah, they started moving games to TBS and TNT. And if you don't have cable package or whatever deal, you don't get those certain games anymore. True TV, stuff like that. You only get what's on CBS for free, I guess. So
shit, you just reminded me. I have Fubo. I don't get TNT and True TV, so I'm stuck with just the CBS games. I'm gonna have to figure, quote unquote, figure something out like I do for AEW pay-per-views.
you just go to Buffalo Wild Wings and sit there for 10 hours.
Yeah,
and only order a water.
Right. All right, I think
waitress.
Exactly.
You're that guy.
Wraps things up. Alex, if you want to give your social media and stuff or where people can find you, feel free to do that now.
Yeah, sure. Just at Alex Barrio on Twitter and Instagram. It's pretty easy to find me. It's AlexDelBarrio at Alex Barrio on Instagram, Twitter. So
all right, awesome, man.
I tweet a lot of nonsense, wrestling, action figure, collectible, whatever. It's kind
of. I know one of these days we'll have to have you on and pick your brain about that and get and your NXT background.
Yeah, I'd love to come on, man. Whatever.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the games, and we'll see. I'm gonna write down everybody's picks and see who did the best out of Alex, DJ, and Mike at the end of all this. So, and remember to tip us if you guys hit on your brackets. Again, Alex, thanks so much, man, and we'll definitely have you on again to talk some wrestling and stuff like that. So, thanks, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, fellas.
Thanks, guys.